Welcome, and thanks for tuning into the Norman County Virtual Crop Show. Due to the COVID pandemic, we decided to move this program to the format of radio and digital, and hoping to still give you guys the opportunity to still hear some of our great speakers. So, thanks for being patient with us. As yesterday, we moved through some of these technical issues, and hopefully today we'll work out some of those bumps and you'll have a better experience. So my name is Heather Dufault. I am the Norman County Crop Educator, Ag Educator. I also share this position with Polk County. My husband and I also have a crop farm rotation near Crookston, and our children are also involved in our farm. So today I am excited to bring you the program. We have a great lineup of speakers, and we hope that you will enjoy listening.
I'm Whitney Pittman, working with YourLiveEvent.com and RNJ Broadcasting Incorporated, KRJB Radio. Today, we are, again, as Heather mentioned, doing a rebroadcast of the Norman County Crop Show as we worked through some technical difficulties yesterday. Our first presentation is a message from U.S. Congresswoman Michelle Fishbach, representing Minnesota's 7th District. Representative Fishbach's presentation is brought to you by Community Co-op's Energy Solutions.
This is Rocky Brune from Community Co-op's Energy Solutions team. Will, Sherwood, and myself will deliver customer service and energy solutions to your farm or business operation. I'm in your area making calls and look forward to seeing you soon. Community Co-op's Energy Solutions will meet with you at your location, virtually or on the phone. Contact us at 1-888-935-2281 and hear how we can help you with your energy solutions from Community Co-ops.
Hello, and thank you for the opportunity to join you on Virtual Ag Day. It's always been good to be with the people of Norman and Polk counties and the surrounding areas, and I hope to be up in your neck of the woods very soon. First, I want to share a bit about myself. My husband Scott and I have been married for 33 years. We have 2 grown children and 5 grandchildren and another on the way. I live near Paynesville, and I represented the Paynesville area in the Minnesota Senate for more than 2 decades and served as Minnesota's lieutenant governor before being elected to Congress. I took office in January representing Minnesota's 7th Congressional District, which spans 38 counties and 34,000 square miles in western Minnesota. I am new to Congress, but I'm not new to the issues facing the Minnesotans I represent, particularly our farmers. Agriculture is a way of life in western Minnesota. Our district is among the top agriculture producing districts in the nation and is home to more than 30,000 farmers. In fact, the 7th District is responsible for nearly half of Minnesota's agricultural sales. That's why I'm so pleased to have been seated on the House Agriculture Committee, where I can be a voice for Minnesota's farmers, in addition to my spots on the House Rules and Judiciary Committees. With my position on the House Agriculture Committee, I will advocate for the agricultural community in Washington, just as I did in the state legislature, pushing back against the overregulation that makes it difficult to expand operations, enacting common sense policies that make it easier to farm, supporting family farmers, and defending the rural way of life. I will always work across party lines at a time when bipartisanship is needed. My priorities include ensuring adequate access to broadband internet that is available in every corner of our district and working to revitalize roads, bridges, and other infrastructure that we rely on every day to travel and transport our goods. I will also work to protect and improve risk management tools available to farmers because it is imperative that the agriculture community has the tools and resources it needs to weather the market effects of this pandemic. I will be a voice for the farmers whose livelihoods are threatened by radical policies such as the Green New Deal, and I will work to expand market access for western Minnesota farmers. My advocacy for farming in Minnesota began on day one, along with many of my colleagues from the Midwest and other agricultural states. I sent a letter to the Biden administration highlighting the important role that H-2A guest workers play in the agricultural supply chain and urging the administration to provide an exemption to pandemic travel restrictions so American farmers can fill vacancies. I've also joined my colleagues in calling on the FCC to take every possible measure to ensure underserved rural communities are able to take advantage of the federal government's program for broadband connectivity. To be sure, there is a lot of work ahead of us, but there is so much we can accomplish by working together. I'm looking forward to working with you and all of Minnesota's ag community to make sure that you have the tools you need to be successful. Thank you for all that you do, and please do not hesitate to reach out to my office if there's anything that we can do for you. My door is always open. Thank you again.
Today's live broadcast of the Norman County Virtual Crop Show is brought to you in part by Ray Hybrids, Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers, the Bennett Hoagland Agency, and Soyco International. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have made today's coverage possible. You're watching the 2021 Norman County Virtual Crop Show here on yourliveevent.com and listening on KRJB 106.5 FM.
Get your field ready for planting this year and talk to the Foston Tri-Co-op for all your fertilizer, chemical, and soil testing needs. The Foston Tri-Co-op, with locations in Foston, McIntosh, and now in Gully. Talk to Dave in Foston, Luke in McIntosh, and Shane in Gully, and they'll point you in the right direction for all your fertilizer, chemical, and soil testing needs. The Foston Tri-Co-op, your go-to source for everything you need for the 2021 planting season.
The Norman County Soil Water Conservation District is still taking orders for trees for spring planting. Call 584-5169 through February to order your trees. And when it comes to buffers, this reminder to landowners. Required buffers along streams and public ditches must not be planted to crops. Fields will continue to be checked for compliance. Call the Norman County Soil Water Conservation District office at 584-5169 for any questions.
Our next presenter here today for the Norman County Crop Show is Mike Skaug, Vice President of Minnesota Soybean Growers Association and the Chairman of the Board for the Ag Innovation Campus coming to Crookston with construction starting here this spring. Mike's presentation is brought to you by the Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers.
Become a member of the Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers Association. Your membership is important. County Soybean and Corn Growers provides funds for us to spend in our rural communities on things that matter to all of us. In Norman County, we have provided funds to local food banks, local fire departments, books for our youth, local fair activities, and future Farmers of America students in our area schools, and have awarded over $11,500 in youth scholarships. Contact your local Norman County Soybean and Corn Board member or corn and soybean representative to become a member. Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers and their checkoffs are a proud sponsor of the 2021 Norman County Crop Show.
Mike Skaug joining us here on the Norman County Crop Show, the virtual version here in 2021. Mike Skaug is the chairman of the board for the Ag Innovation Campus and the vice president of the Minnesota Soybean Growers Association. Mike, take it away.
Well, thank you, Whitney, very much for inviting me for this virtual opportunity to speak about the Ag Innovation Campus. Yeah, like you said, I'm currently the board chairman of the Ag Innovation Campus. And a lot of people ask, what is the AIC? And it is a specialty crush facility that has the ability to extract oils from all plant types. This business entity was founded by Minnesota Soybean Growers Association, the Minnesota Soybean Research and Promotion Fund, and the Ag Utilization Research Institute. And our mission as a campus is to serve as an incubator for agricultural innovations with a goal to foster new and novel products, create jobs, and increase the value of agriculture in the region and the state. Our vision also for the campus is to be a host to a variety of private and public groups within agriculture by providing the tools and technology to expand value-added agriculture products while offering a campus suitable for real-world learning, both in production agriculture as well as in technology suitable campus. Most recently, October of 2020, we had a groundbreaking ceremony where we invited the state legislatures and Governor Tim Walz to help us celebrate the breaking ground for moving forward of the Ag Innovation Campus. I want to point out also that we're very respectful and happy that the Minnesota State Legislature awarded to the Ag Innovation Campus a grant of $5 million for startup. And we're very appreciative of that. And we wanted to demonstrate with this groundbreaking ceremony that we are eager and determined to get going. Revenue projections for the campus. Our first year of full operation, we expect to have a $450,000 net profit. In the industry, this is pretty modest, but we're using that number for our projections for the first year. And also, this slide demonstrates some of the one of the research bays, which will host research and processing for specialty oils, and we'll probably have employment of about 60 people and office management among those. And then we'll be using 3 crushing lines with the oil extraction so that we can protect the identity of the specialty oils that we'll be processing in this plant. Let's see here now. So office space will have about $450,000 in revenue each year in office and other rental spaces for research, development, and that sort of thing. When we are processing of soybeans or other oil types, we'll run 324 days of continual operations, and we're process crush 2.5 million bushels of soybeans during that period of operations. The AIC campus has been registered with the state of Minnesota as a non-for-profit. This campus is a special for crushing a small facility for crushing soybeans and or any product that produces oil. And we registered as a non-for-profit of the state of Minnesota so that we could access industry grants more easily, whether they're from federal level or state level. We can then reinvest all profits from the operations back into the operations, and we will be able to, down the road, we'll be able to issue grants ourselves to other industry partners that could join in with the research and the facility in Crookston, Minnesota. Our construction plans are probably aggressive, but we hope to physically do construction starting in March of 2021. We hope to have the processing plant completed and operational late November of 2021. Our total cost going into the project is $7 million. And so far we have reviewed 6 construction plans to date. This slide, if everyone's able to view, is the crush walk. We're proposing to have an observation gallery on the 2nd level of the facility down through the middle of the plant, where people can observe what's going on in the research bays and laboratories. And then on the other side of the gallery, you'll be able to watch in real time as the crushing process is going on and the extraction of the oil. We'll also have kiosks available for people for learning and information that they can develop on their own. So we're hoping to foster a foundation for the future with this facility and have anyone that is interested and wants to pursue a career can have some hands-on education training. The crushing plant is the first facility in the world to purchase and sell soybeans based off amino acid values. And we'll have 10 research bays for innovation and ag research. Multiple classrooms will be available, regional agricultural education center, and we'll have a conference ability with up to 100 people capacity. So we hoping that this is going to be a mainstay for the community for generations to come. And I think we're going to have a lot of interest in this new facility.
All right. And as far as, a website or anything for people to learn more and to take a look at some of your guys' plans, is that set up and whatnot already?
So we're sharing the website of Minnesota Soy. So people, if they're interested, can go to mnsoy.com and click on the link that would get you to the Ag Innovation Campus.
All righty. Perfect.
So
Thank you for joining us. Oh, go ahead.
Well, I would like to add that during our groundbreaking ceremony, we had many people comment that it is calling it a spirited idea and a bold move forward. So that was good to hear from others, and we hope we can make that happen.
All right. Well, thank you again for joining us, and thank you for redoing this with our technical issues yesterday. And it's great to get that information and really exciting to see all of this come together.
Thank you very much. It was a great opportunity.
Today's live broadcast of the Norman County Virtual Crop Show is brought to you in part by the Kappas-Laren Agency, West Central Ag Services, Franson Bank and Trust, and Minnesota Wheat Growers Association. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have made today's coverage possible. You're watching the 2021 Norman County Virtual Crop Show here on yourliveevent.com and listening on KRJB 106.5 FM.
Live, work, and play in Norman County. The Norman County EDA wants to help you explore all that Norman County offers you. Visit the website discovernormancounty.com. Norman County offers new business opportunities, along with homes you can afford and community that cares, plus schools with small class sizes offering great education. In Norman County, you can enjoy outdoor recreation from hunting and fishing to trails and cross-country hiking. Find out what Norman County has for you at discovernormancounty.com. The Norman County EDA welcoming you to live, work, and play in Norman County.
Visit with Don Merkins at the Kappas-Laren Agency, your local agent who knows the local landscape. Kappas-Laren believes in the rich farming tradition of this community, and so does Nationwide. It's their commitment to protecting our farms and ranches that has helped make them the #1 farm insurer and a valued partner to the Kappas-Laren Agency. Give them a call at 784-2809 to learn how they can help you protect your operation for years to come.
Austin Holy, American Crystal Sugar representative, will be joining us here next on the Norman County Crop Show. Austin's presentation is brought to you by West Central Ag.
All that you see is a business that has been built for its members' success. Our history of achievements and challenges has formed what we are today. We have aligned our systems and processes for your continued growth. A company that has evolved to handle your needs today and beyond. We consider ourselves your partner in ag production, owned by you, proud to serve you in this ever-changing world marketplace. We are West Central Ag Services.
I'm Austin Holy with American Crystal Sugar. Agriculturist, kind of in the Ada area. Kind of give you a summary of the 2020 crop and then kind of an outlook for 2021. As most of you know, the 2019 crop didn't go as planned, left a lot of beets in the ground. The fall, not much fertilizer got applied or tillage got done. So the spring of 2020 was kind of crazy, I guess, of guys trying to get fertilizer down and get some tillage done before they start planting. My first field was planted on April 22nd. I was out on the sand, kind of over by Hitterdall area. That was on drain tile. It seemed like, I think it was the first 1,500 acres for my area were planted into drain tile. So that helped out big time for some guys this year, or this past year, 2020. Seemed like a lot of ground was being switched for planting sugar beets. I remember I had 45 different new fields that we didn't contract. So a lot of switching fields going on. A lot of it being some new fields being soybean ground, which didn't help out a whole lot. We usually want wheat ground before planting into sugar beets. On May 7th, each year we got spring tap, basically just if we need additional acres planted, we can use that spring tap, and growers who signed up for spring tap can plant more acres. So on May 7th, we basically released 15,000 acres extra to plant. So that helped us out a little bit, getting some more tons in at the end of last year. My last field was planted on May 29th, which seems it's over a month long of planting for my area, so long time. The average planting date last year was May 13th. The 10-year average is May 5th, so we're over a week later last year than the past 10 years. So definitely a wet spring. Kind of going forward into the summer, seemed like right when June started, summer kind of took off. Growing degree days really took off on us. A lot of moisture helped us out big time for growing wise. Had some issues with the spray season. Just it was wet, it was windy. Some growers couldn't get into spray some of the herbicides, resistant water hemp and other weeds like ragweed. Biggest thing for controlling wise was probably water hemp. A lot of water hemp within the Ada area. Some guys put down pre's and others didn't, but some areas right around the river had some major issues with water hemp, just from, I'm assuming, flooding, bringing the water hemp seed right into their fields. Seeing a little bit of disease, a little bit of rhizoctonia, a little bit of Aphanomyces at the beginning of the year when it was a little bit wetter, very warm out. But as the season went on, we kind of dried out and didn't see a whole lot of that. Some sugar beet root maggot flies just northeast of Ada, the Green Meadow Township area. That area seems to be growing a little bit each and every year. Cosper was found right before 4th of July. Some guys started spraying the next week. Some waited till the end of July. I think that's what hurt us last year was some of the later spraying, and definitely towards the end of the year when we got some big rains in August, maybe washed some of the protectants off, and this Cosper kind of came and ate our lunch in September, and didn't look very good looking around the valley, more towards the southern end of the valley. Fast forward into pre-pile, it started on August 18th. The sugar wasn't very good starting out. I want to say it was right around that 14% sugar. As we kept going through pre-pile though, it slowly started to climb, and right before stockpile it really climbed. So those dry days definitely helped us out big time on sugar. Try to think of some other things. We started stockpile on it was September 30th. It's kind of a little bit earlier this year. Usually we start on October 1st. The weather was right, so decision was made to take it and let's get these beets in. The last day of stockpile was October 16th, but 97% of all the beets were in by October 9th. So they say it was the fastest harvest in history. So that went very smooth for growers, and I think they appreciate it. I know the yields were down a little bit. Some growers thought they're going to have higher yields, but that definitely, that dry spell in September and part of August hurt us big time too. Helped us with sugar, but definitely not with tons. The Red River Valley for tons was 24.8. Sugar was 18.36. Sugar lost molasses was a little bit below 1%. So good numbers. Seems like this last year after stockpile was done, there's plenty of time to get fall tillage done and fertilizer applied. Just contracting with a few guys here in the last few weeks that they got all their stuff put on. So we're looking pretty good going into this spring here. Over the winter here, factories have been slicing pretty good. On average right now, we're slicing 41,750 tons per day for the entire valley, which is very good. We should finish up slice. I want to say Hillsborough should be that March 14th time, but we'll just wait and see what happens here. For this spring 2021, planting tolerance has been increased a little bit, just since we've been short. We were short last year of a crop, a few other years. There's not much snow cover out there, so hopefully once warms up a little bit and we get some sun on that ground, it's gonna warm the ground up real quick and have that frost come out real fast too. So like I said earlier, but a lot of fertilizer and a lot of tillage done already, so that's a plus. Not so much work for the growers here this spring. And then always a plus is Easter seems to be, or it's April 4th this year, and some of the older guys always say that you never get in before Easter, so that's a plus too, that maybe we can get in a little bit earlier this year. But that's basically all I have. Hopefully Mother Nature treats us pretty well this year, and hopefully it'll be a good growing season.
Today's live broadcast of the Norman County Virtual Crop Show is brought to you in part by AgCountry Farm Credit Services, the Norman County Soil and Water Conservation District, Austin Tri-Co-op, and the City of Ada. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have made today's coverage possible. You're watching the 2021 Norman County Virtual Crop Show here on yourliveevent.com and listening on KRJB 106.5 FM.
Winter is a planning season for farmers, a time when your mind is on your fields. But the shorter days doesn't mean there's less work to be done. At Sis van der Hoef, we know that lower temps won't cool your passion for production. We're continually striving to develop sugar beet varieties that thrive despite the pressures from disease and the challenges of nature. Because sharing the pride of success starts with sharing the passion to achieve it. Sis van der Hoef, a passion that grows.
Joining us next, we will have Randy Tufton here for the Norman County Crop Show. Randy Tufton with the USDA office here in Ada. Randy's presentation is brought to you by the Bennett Hoagland Agency.
At the Bennett Hoagland Agency, we understand that crop insurance is not a one-size-fits-all program. It's our specialty at the Bennett Hoagland Agency, and we can easily identify the options you need to help your farm succeed. John, Wayne, and Marissa are dedicated to helping you create a cost-effective risk management plan that supports your unique farm operation. Call or stop at the Bennett Hoagland Agency to review your crop insurance coverage. We're an equal opportunity provider.
Randy Tufton, County Executive Director, joining us here for the Norman County Crop Show. Randy, take it away. Tell us what's going on with FSA here in 2021.
Yep, thank you. First off, I'd like to thank both you and Heather for putting this on, as well as the Minnesota Extension Service and the radio for setting these presentations up, and also all the sponsors to make this happen. It's a great deal. On my slides here, the first thing I want to talk about is COVID and the staff. FSA is open for business, but not in person at the office. We're still closed for office visitors, but we have the entry door open for drop-off paperwork if needed. And we ask producers and landowners whoever comes to our office to please wear a mask if you enter the entryway. We are using the phone, mail, email, box and one span. We're using that for some of our e-signatures, and also in a few cases, we're actually setting up Teams meetings for producers. Some of us are in the office and others are teleworking. So we have kind of a mixed work flow going there. We have things going back and forth, and a huge thank you to the office staff for their hard work and getting things done. And if anybody has questions after today's presentation, I've included my email there. It's randall.tufton@usda.gov. Next topic, we have ARC PLC sign up. March 15th is the deadline, and they've told us right now there'll be no extensions. This is for the 2021 sign up, and this is for both the election and enrollment. You have annual contracts or a multi-year contract if started in 2019 and no changes. Those still will stay in effect. If there's farm changes, we need those, the new lease or consent form, and make sure all the names and addresses and the shares are correct on those contracts. We don't have issues for going forward. And again, this change of election is for 21, 22, and 23 in the new farm bill. Prior to enrollment, the 19 and 20 was done at the same time in one election. And now moving forward, there's an opportunity to change the election here before the 15th of March and also sign a contract if you do so. The Minnesota Extension webinar link is in my last bulletin I shared with the public. So if you want to go back and look at that training material, it's really good stuff. Another big program going right now is the Quality Loss Adjustment Program. March 5th is a deadline for that. This is the spinoff of the WIP program that dealt with the quantity, except the QLA is on the quality. This is a quality piece of our disaster programs for 18 and 19. You need a 5% or greater quantity loss as a result of a disaster event. You need to show all the bushels that had a quality discount. You need verifiable evidence of discounts and the beginning price. Need test run within 30 days of harvest, or possible on the sales date if it's done later now. So if you have grain in the bin today and you're selling it and the elevator tests it, grades it when they do their pricing of it, the county committee can take those results. Payments are 70% of that discounted amount if they have the evidence, and if it's on a certified quantity only and available for, it's like fed or storage, then you have an additional 15% factor. And it is possible an additional factor may be applied depending on the funds after the program is completed. Continuing with this QLA program, the crops that were tested but not sold would get a 50% factor and then be assigned the county average price and the county average loss amount. And again, that would be determined at the end of the program. They would add up all the Norman County numbers of the ones who did have evidence, and then the ones who do not would get this weighted average, or excuse me, county average. There is a guide to assist in form completion is available from Sal in the office. The last bulletin had links to training webinars. There's some Minnesota webinars and also NDSU. Still waiting for clarification on a few items, but we're doing our best to push forward as we're getting close to the end of the program. There'll be no payments until the end. The results will be tabulated, and also the second half of the WIP payments are affected by this. So when we're all done with all the numbers, they'll figure out what the payments will be, if it'll be 100% or some type of a proration. Farmers.gov has information on the program. There's also a national helpline for assistance, 877-508-8364. And in Norman County, you'll need to provide weather data if you have any type of 18 losses. In 19, we were declared disaster from excessive moisture. So in 19, we have the weather event already documented, but if there's 18 losses, you need to bring those in. To summarize what you need then, you need eligible grading factor discounts. For example, falling numbers, low test weight. And just to clarify here, drying costs and moisture discounts are not eligible. Price per unit of the commodity prior to any discounts. The total amount of revenue deducted due to the eligible grading factors. And then the quantity impacted. Have a spelling error there, may need to split up between counties if farming more than one. So if you have an operation that farms in 3 counties, you'll have at least 3 line items on the application. And again, to look at how to fill those out, there are some good examples to review on the NDSU FSA training done by North Dakota. Another big program we've had here in the last 2 years, the Coronavirus Food Assistance Program, CFAP. We've done 2 signups. And we're currently doing a few revisions on some of the existing applications. And just to clarify, there's no new sign up for CFAP 3. There have been discussions, but the new administration is trying to determine what they're going to do for new assistance. Going back to some additional programs, we have the Non-Insured Crop Disaster Assistance Program and some RMA things going on. We still have our CAT coverage, 50% yield and 55 of the price. And again, there's some buy-up coverage available for a premium. We can go up to 65% of a yield, 100% of the price. And then over the years, the crops and dates have remained the same. And here's a listing of all the crops. The one coming up now is March 15th for annual spring seeded crops and perennial forage pasture. And also March 15th is a date for crop insurance for most crops. Conservation, we have another general sign-up going on right now. In this new farm bill, this is the second general sign-up we've been having. There was a deadline of February 12th, but that deadline has been removed, and currently there's no deadline. But we don't know when that's going to stop. So if anybody's interested in a general sign-up, please contact our office right away to set up an appointment over the phone. There is also some possible changes coming to try to increase interest. I think the new administration is trying to conduct a possible change of the rules to see if they can entice more participation. Currently, the rental rates are from $53 to $105 per acre, 50% cost share, not to exceed some set rates. We do still require mid-contract management activities. And also we're looking at some larger tracts with our safe practice, the CP38E, the 25 is the grass practice. This was limited to 40-acre tracts prior to the sign-up, and now we are able to take larger tracts under that. And also it's still a competitive ranking based on the EBI, the Environmental Benefits Index. So you want to plant the best things you can plant to get the most points to be competitive nationwide. In addition to that, there's a continuous CRP sign-up ongoing, and there the rental rates go from 56 to 112. Eligibility, the land and smaller tracts, unless a wetland restoration. There is a new practice, a prairie strip practice that has been added, and this is field borders from 30 to 120 feet in width. Eligibility, you have to own the property for at least 12 months, and that is also for the general sign-up. And again, the cost share is 50%. But for the continuous, we do have some signing incentives of 10%, some practice incentives of additional 20%, and rental bonuses for new land at 20%. You may start the contract the month after the contract is approved, so there might be some possibility of still getting contracts done this spring before you start planting grass this spring. Or if we get it a little bit later on here this spring, summer, you can start a contract 10/1 of 21. And again, call for a phone appointment. Marketing assistance loans, we're still doing these. They are now 12-month loans instead of 9-month loans. Because of the coronavirus, there was an additional 3 months added to our loan maturity. Loan rates there for Norman County on 2020 wheat is $3.95, corn $2.02, soybeans $5.92, and barley $2.37. Small grain loan deadline is 3/31, and corn, soybeans, and sunflowers is May 31st. And again, the words we keep talking about every time we talk about assistance loans is call before you haul. These are commodities that have liens on them, so before you start putting an auger in the bin and hauling grain, make sure you call the office for delivery notices. And also we compare those with the assembly slip dates on the delivery. Farm loan programs, they're still alive and well down in Moorhead. They're currently teleworking. If you need to contact the Moorhead office, it's 218-233-7773. Micah Bankston, Jessica Heitkamp, and the loan manager, Brian Christensen, are there to assist you in operating chattel and real estate loans, and fact sheets are available for that. Farm storage facility loans, we have loans up to $500,000 from 3 to 12 years, interest rates from 0.25% all the way up to 1.125%, so very good rates. We have most commodities covered in this program, and it's not just for bins. We get involved with a lot of the handling equipment, grain dryers, and also we're getting into trucks, grain trailers, augers, grain carts, etc. And again, fact sheets are available for lots of other data. The Livestock Disaster Program continues through 2023 in this Farm Bill, and you need to report any losses within 30 days. Honeybees are within 15 days. I'd recommend livestock producers to get our fact sheets with all of our rules. More verifiable information required. The third party not affiliated with the farming operation is required. And inventory numbers before and after are used in that program. Side swamp compliance. This is a program that goes along with all of our programs for compliance. And this is the HEL wetland determinations on an 80-10-26. All participants and landowners must follow the rules, plan ahead for new projects. The certification stays in effect until a change is made, or you're going to do something for a new tile or a new ditch, clearing some land, plowing up some pasture sod. And also you can see there on the slide on 2714, the new farm bill added the crop insurance compliance rules with FSA also. This is an NRCS determination, so anybody farming should make sure they know what that determination is. And just a reminder, do not plant on a converted wetland. Farm updates and changes, keep FSA records current. Land changes, name changes. We're seeing a lot of trusts, revocable trusts that come into play that actually we treat that as a separate person. Even though it's your same social security number, it is a different name. Many programs will need new deeds, especially on CRP. And we're looking for cropland increases or decreases, and also eligibility paperwork changes. If there's members, shares, contributions, etc. that change, please keep FSA in the loop. On outreach, we're happy to say we continue with our KRJB radio program the second Tuesday of the month at 9 a.m. and they replay segments throughout the month. And we tease as always short news days when they play me on the radio, but I'm happy they do it. Also news media, papers and magazines. We have bulletins that are mailed out from or emailed out from the state office, and also bulletins from Norman County that I send out. If you have not done that, please go to www.fsa.usda.gov/subscribe to sign up for those emails, and be careful what you select. Don't select too many options. You can collect all states, all counties, all programs, national office, and you'll get a lot of stuff. So be careful what you initially sign up for. Also, FSA Farm Plus and Level 2 Access is something that the more technically ability you can look for producers. There's online sites. Other businesses post newsletters for us, and a big thank you for that, sharing our information. And if you want to sign up for FSA text messages, the phone number is 372-669, and the message is Minnesota MN Norman. Our county committee elections, we have Glenn Alexander as our current chair, Gene Hanson is our vice chair, John Johnson is a member, and Denise Siriard is our current minority advisor. And these folks took place here in the last election that we held here over the winter, and started the first meeting in January. We want to thank everybody that participated in the election process. Big thank you for that. That's a quick rundown of lots of FSA programs. We have lots of other information, like I say, on fact sheets on our websites. And if you have more questions on QLA, I guess I would recommend that you probably bring up that NDSU link that I have in my last bulletin. And I want to thank NDSU and North Dakota FSA, Laura Heinrich, for presenting that and putting that presentation together. A lot of good information there. And what I did in about 15 minutes, some of these training sessions are taking 2-3 hours. So real quick rundown, and appreciate being part of this presentation today. Thank you.
Thank you, Randy. So I do have a question for you. Do you see, we've been through the first part of the pandemic, reporting our acres and things last spring. Do you see that going to be about the same for this year moving forward, or do you think that we're going to be able to get into the office and go through those things face to face with you guys? Do you guys have any indication on that yet?
Well, Heather, that's a real good question. I was hoping to get through the phases. We were shut down as an agency. Everybody had to go to teleworking and close the offices. And we started going back through our phases when our numbers of COVID were down. and our trends were going down. We could go through phases 1, 2, 3. Currently, Norman County is in phase 1, which about, I would say, a third of the offices in Minnesota are in phase 1. We have to get to phase 2 before we can do special one-on-one appointments. In phase 3 and beyond is when we get in actually opening up the office. And recently we've been told that opportunity to go to the different phases is on hold. So, I'm anticipating until the vaccines get in place and a lot more things happen with certainty of our pandemic, that we'll probably be in a closed state. And we can anticipate that we'll be doing a lot of business out in the parking lot again, sharing documents back and forth and doing a lot of electronic signatures and so forth. So again, we appreciate the patience of all of our producers and landowners dealing with us. It's like I say, we do have a lot of paperwork to deal with, and doing it remotely is just really tough. But we'll do our best to get the job done, and we appreciate again the patience of all of our constituents.
That it does make it a challenge, especially when we're going through all these extra programs that are being put out, the CFAPs and the QLA programs, all those extra. I just did all those for my farm too, so I know it takes a lot of extra work on the producer side too. So
yeah, everybody's busy. There's no doubt of that.
Absolutely. I don't believe there are any more questions on our YouTube channel at this point, Mike or Randy. So thank you for agreeing to join us on the Norman County Ag Day program.
Today's live broadcast of the Norman County Virtual Crop Show is brought to you in part by Sis Vonderhoff Sugar Beet Seed, the Norman County EDA, RDK Enterprises, and Dan Ness, Beta Seed Sales Representative. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have made today's coverage possible. You're watching the 2021 Norman County Virtual Crop Show here on yourliveevent.com and listening on KRJB 106.5 FM.
This is Jim Lund from Legacy Seeds. Did you know in a bag of seed, 100% of the yield potential comes from two components, the seed's genetics and the seed's quality? Here at Legacy Seeds, along with delivering the most cutting-edge genetics, we pride ourselves in having some of the industry's highest quality standards. Because we know each spring, a farmer gets one chance to plant with the highest yield potential, and here at Legacy Seeds, we're just the company to help you do it.
So give them a call. Legacy Seeds, Alice, North Dakota, 701-689-BEAN or legacyseeds.com.
Next on the Norman County Crop Show, we will have Jeff Beaudry with AgCountry Farm Credit Services giving us an update on the markets. Jeff Beaudry's presentation today is brought to you by AgCountry Farm Credit Services.
There's no way to count the number of sandwiches you've packed over the years. Hard to imagine this day would come. Yeah, there's still the same fields, the same roads, the same hard work. But now they're in someone else's hands. And you couldn't be more proud of who you're handing the farm to. No matter what the future holds, AgCountry is here to help you plan ahead.
All right, I think we are ready to go again. Thank you for joining us back on the Norman County Ag Day Crop Show program. Next up, we have Jeff Beaudry. He's our step-in speaker last minute here. We had a little bit of a change of schedule. Jeff is with AgCountry Farm Credit Services as their marketing specialist. Jeff, I believe, has been with AgCountry for about 25 plus or so years. So Jeff, you farm up in the Argyle area, and you're going to give us some information on what the markets are doing, right?
Yeah, I'll give you a little down and dirty of the USDA update from last month, and we'll just take it from there, Heather. What we're looking at now for the closes as of report day, corn was up to 556 1/4 for the spot month, and it was at 455 3/4 for new crop. Soybeans at the close of the day on reporting day was up 3/4. So it's up 14 cents. So soybeans were at 14.01 and new crop was at 11.90 3/4. Spring wheat spot month was at 626 1/2 and new crop was at 652. The U.S. corn, the only change to the balance sheet of the U.S. corn was an addition of 50 million bushels of exports. If realized, I believe it'd be or would tie a record as far as the corn balance sheet. The stocks to use would be down to 10.27%, which is extremely low. The only years with a lower stock to use since 1987 would be 1995, 96, 2002, 2003, 2010, 2011, and 2012. If you notice, they tend to come in sets of 2 to 3. Input values are also rising, which is very normal. As soon as the commodity prices start to go up, the input prices start to follow, and it does present a margin challenge for those who were sold heavily ahead but didn't book your inputs. So what I reported on last month was that urea was up 35% since last fall, and hydrous is up 30% since last fall, and potash was up 22%. And if you actually look at the price of the commodities, wheat was only up 14%, soybeans were up 38%, and corn was up 47%. Well, if you take into account how much fertilizer has gone up, chemicals are up 10 to 15%, and fuel is up around 25%. So what I'm telling guys that if you're going ahead and locking in some prices, you had better lock in your inputs because the inputs continue to rise. The good news is there's a lot of nitrogen that went down last fall. The bad news is those acres are basically stuck with corn, putting more question marks on the price moves, changing acres over to soybeans. Other values, that phosphate is up $250 to $300 a ton, higher than last summer. DAP is just a plain runaway, but it's not as bad as the 2018 year in the terms of bushels of corn to pay for a ton of fertilizer. World corn, world ending stocks, they came in, corn was the actual number was 286.53 million bushels. The average estimate was 279.79 million bushels. Soybeans came in at 83.36 million bushels actual. The estimate was at 83.3, and wheat came in at 304.22 million bushels, which was a little lower than anticipated, and the average estimate was at 312. World corn 2021 projected world ending stocks rose to 286.53 million metric tons. A slight increase in production due to some possible rounding differences all amounted to. The use, however, fell 3 million metric tons. Here's the world stocks versus China. That makes it a little more complicated. The USDA's Chinese baseline stocks have not changed, but the world stocks have increased, concentrated, but according to USDA, Chinese stocks are not that low. But the Food and Agricultural Organization run by the UN cut the ending stocks by 54 million metric tons last week compared to December. And there's no real way to reconcile the two. U.S. soybeans. The USDA came in with 120 million bushel carryout, which is a low print for this time of year. The only year that was lower, the final estimate, was 2003 and 2013. The only change was a 20 million bushel increase to export projections. The USDA did not increase the projected price. The U.S. low footprint projection for February and the U.S. soybean shipments hit a new record of 47.5 million tons. Shipments to China were 32.4 million tons of the 47.5 million, 3 times total the year before. These are some awful busy charts that I'm going to skip right through. World soybeans. Brazil soybeans. They came in at an actual of 133 million metric tons. The average market, they figured, was 132.46. The Argentine beans came in at 48 million metric tons. The average was at 47.64. The Brazilian corn, they say it's going to come in at 109 million metric tons, and the average was 108.4. So there wasn't a real big shakeup or a real change on the beans and corn in South America. The world ending stocks, however, corn came in at 286.53 million metric tons. The market average was at 279.8. Soybeans came in at 83.36, and the average estimate was 83.3, so there was no real change there at all. But wheat came in at 304.22 million metric tons, which was 8 million metric tons lower than the market average estimate. The world soybean carryout came in at around 22%, 23%. The world stocks to use came in at around 22%. The U.S. wheat now is another story. It's not much of a story. There's no change to the balance sheet. The price was raised by 15 cents for the 2020 crop. However, there were some class changes. The hard red spring wheat carryout dropped 21 million bushels, where the hard red winter wheat crop rose by 28 million bushels. And white wheat, the carryout dropped by 10 million bushels. Notable changes in the world wheat market, the production increased just under 1 million metric ton, which was really pretty minimal. The usage, though, increased by 10 million metric tons, which is really good to see on world wheat because we have an awful lot of wheat on hand. And where did it go to? India was up 3.5 metric tons. China was up 5 million metric tons, and several other small changes made up the rest. So it was, the world usage was up 10 million metric tons, which is very good to see for wheat. The Chinese stocks versus the rest of the world. All right, world wheat and the Chinese stocks, they're at around 110%. So what that is saying is that China has enough wheat to sustain itself for over a year. The rest of the world has stocks around 21 to 22% stocks to use ratio, which is fairly high as well. But China, as you know, they keep on collecting a lot of wheat, a lot of beans, and a lot of corn. Chinese stocks, the percentage of the world stocks, we're at around 49%. China's ending stocks are around 51%. Now, the big thing that I want to talk about today mostly is the input costs. The input costs have gone up tremendously, and I'm afraid we're going to have a lot of people stuck in the rut of not locking in their input costs and trying to lock up some of these good prices that we're seeing right now. So the big warning that I have for everybody, if you're going to go ahead and market some of your crop, which I think is a good idea, you better lock in your inputs as well. So that's about all I have, Heather. I'm turning it over back to you.
All right, Jeff, thank you. I know you guys at AgCountry Farm Credit do not only your marketing information that you guys provide out, but do you still help farmers go through some of these FSA programs as well, right, Jeff?
Yes, we go through a lot of the FSA programs for them. We do a lot of break-even analysis for them and help them put together a marketing plan.
We don't have any further questions for Jeff at this point. So, Jeff, if you would just hang on in case we do have questions.
I sure will, Heather.
Later on.
Today's live broadcast of the Norman County Virtual Crop Show is brought to you in part by IRE Insurance, Legacy Seeds, Community Co-op Energy Solutions, and Valley United Co-op. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have made today's coverage possible. You're watching the 2021 Norman County Virtual Crop Show here on yourliveevent.com and listening on KRJB 106.5 FM.
This is Chris from RDK Enterprises, your local planter experts. Tune up, add up, the math is simple. Every additional percentage of meter accuracy adds a bushel or two more per acre. While they should run at 98% or better, many do not. That's why no matter who made them, no matter their type, every meter should be calibrated every year. Keep your meters in top-notch shape. Call RDK at 701-636-2119 to schedule your meter maintenance today.
Welcome 2021. We are all happy you are here. Time for a fresh start. Hello, Shane with IRE Insurance. The start of each year brings excitement and opportunity for those of us in agriculture. At IRE Insurance, we feel the excitement as well, and we want to make sure 2021 gets off to a great start as you plan for the planting season. We would love to sit down with each of you for annual policy review and make sure your farm's equity is protected. To find an IRE Insurance agent near you, go to ireinsurance.com. IRE Insurance is an equal opportunity provider.
Anthony Hanson will be joining us here next on the Norman County Crop Show as we are rebroadcasting today on KRJB 106.5 FM. And if you are watching here on yourliveevent.com, Anthony Hanson's presentation is brought to you by the Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers Associations.
Become a member of the Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers Association. Your membership is important. County Soybean and Corn Growers provides funds for us to spend in our rural communities on things that matter to all of us. In Norman County, we have provided funds to local food banks, local fire departments, books for our youth, local fair activities, and future Farmers of America students in our area schools, and have awarded over $11,500 in youth scholarships. Contact your local Norman County Soybean and Corn Board member or corn and soybean representative to become a member. Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers and their checkoffs are a proud sponsor of the 2021 Norman County Crop Show.
And now I'm based out of Morris, covering west central Minnesota and up into northwestern Minnesota for IPM, or Integrated Pest Management. And I also cover issues around the state as well too, but that's kind of my home area right now. So it's good to be covering some news here for Norman County. I used to go to college, undergrad up at Concordia and Moorhead, so I've kind of known the area a little bit too myself. And we'll cover a bit today is mostly on the insect side of things. There'll be other days I'll sometimes cover the weeds and diseases, but I know we'll have Angie Peltier come up later to talk about diseases a little more. So a couple updates, and most of just be for soybean and a little bit for corn too. So folks haven't heard about soybean gall midge yet. This is actually a new species in the state, or at least newly described. So this is a new pest that we're keeping an eye on, at least. There's not as much information out there to give recommendations on it at the moment, but a lot of that research is ongoing on how to manage it. So it's basically, if you look at a soybean plant along the stem, you'll find what look like basically small orange maggots on there. And those larvae are usually what you'll find. You'll rarely see the adults, and they kind of have banded legs on them. They almost look like a mosquito a little bit, or a really small fly. And that's why it's called a midge, kind of similar to other species we have. But it started off where we found it first in 2018, far down in southern Minnesota in Rock County. And since then, it has been slowly spreading, or at least being found further north in the state. So we're getting up close to Big Stone County is where it was found in 2019, and then 2020 and surrounding state or counties around there. So we could be getting further into the Red River Valley with this one. It remains to be seen. So we'll keep an eye on that one for 2021. But the main thing with this one is you do get yield loss, especially on your field edges, and you'll see high mortality of your plants. So it'll look like a lot more than just drought stress going on. And that's why you'd want to go out to your field, scout a little bit. And if you are finding something on the edges, you find these basically little orange maggot looking things, that might be an indication you're dealing with soybean gall midge. If you have white mold in your soybean, which Angie will talk about later, there is another species that kind of looks similar, and it's called the white mold gall midge, aptly named. So there are some things to keep in mind if you're finding something that looks like this out there, but those are the main two we're looking at. I'll only cover corn a little bit briefly here because I have a lot of soybean things to cover today. But Ken Osley is a person folks can listen to about things about corn rootworm. I'll talk a little bit about European corn borer. This may be a pest that folks have forgotten about to a degree. It used to be back in around the mid-90s. We were getting significant problems with it. Down in southern Minnesota, we're getting surveys we do every year, and we'd be getting over 300 larvae per 100 plants in those fields. And then even further up north, northwestern Minnesota, we'd get pockets too that would be pretty similar, but we'd sometimes see variation across the state. In 2018 through 2020, we're seeing variation still, but very low numbers. This is due to area-wide suppression using BT corn has drastically reduced European corn borer numbers. But it still pops up every now and then. But the short story is for 2020 and the surveys we had, we really didn't find European corn borer in northwestern Minnesota at least. So there should be a pretty low risk for that one this year. So I'll take the most chunk of time to talk about soybean aphid because that still seems to pop up pretty regularly for our common insects. There are other ones out there. We can spend a lot of time covering the full gamut of pests, but this is a good example for the title of my position is IPM Educator or Integrated Pest Management. And soybean aphid is kind of the poster child of how we manage pests using IPM at least. So for folks who don't know a little bit of the history, it was founded in 2000. So we've been dealing with it for 20 years now in the state. And it caused a drastic increase in insecticide applications. So a lot more input costs for soybeans because before then, we really didn't have any major insect pests to deal with soybeans. So folks have probably heard about the economic threshold for soybean, or soybean aphid, that's 250 aphids per plant. But keep in mind, that is actually not the final number that we use. There's also another metric that's called the economic injury level. That's when you actually get yield loss that's equal to the cost of your insecticide costs. And that's around 670 aphids per plant. So you hear some discussions with people saying, well, that 250 number, that's too high, it should be a lot lower. There's 50, I've heard even some other advertisers saying it should be as low as 10 aphids per plant. And I'll talk a little bit later about how some of those dynamics work, but keep in mind that 670 number, that's when you get to actual damage on the plant. So if you're at 250 aphids per plant, that's a point where there's actually no damage occurring. There's a term called the damage boundary. That's when yield loss is detectable. And that's actually above that 250 threshold. So it's not until you're getting to about 670 aphids per plant that you're actually able to detect much damage at all. You're still above 90% of your potential yield when you hit that point. And it's not until you're well, possibly up to 1,000 plus aphids that you're getting to about that 60% yield loss, 40%, somewhere in that ballpark. You can get high yield loss, but you need really high aphid numbers. So that's where this whole range of counting aphids actually gets pretty important for figuring out basically the value of your crop and the return on investment you get by any insecticide application. So early on in that point where it's 250 aphids or less, we're relying on other control tactics. We have some natural enemies out there, so these parasitoid wasps, some of those lady beetles, but then there are some resistant genetics out there too that I'll cover a little bit about. So those are our first tier defense. Second tier defense is insecticide application if we need that. And you can return back to after insecticide application, rely on your genetics and hopefully natural enemies that are still around out there. So basically we get fewer insecticide applications, less inputs, and hopefully you're getting less financial risk or other risk in your field as well. So I mentioned genetics. These are basically naturally occurring genes found in some Asian soybean lines where both soybean and soybean aphid are native to. And they make the plant less attractive or hospitable to aphids. And these are on the market, but they are difficult to find. They've been kind of on and off in availability over the years. But the university is working on some lines that have multiple resistance traits in there, and then some some traits included that include things like glyphosate resistance. And these resistant traits work pretty well. You'll still find a few aphids on the leaves, but it'll be drastically lower compared to a susceptible plant right next to it. I mentioned those natural enemies again. These are basically the free control tool for farmers, and they reduce the likelihood of an outbreak. And these are susceptible to those broad spectrum insecticides. So that's where we balance all of our different control tools that we use for soybean aphid, and hoping to take advantage of our free tools while we can, and avoiding those insecticide applications until we absolutely need them, so we can save on some of these other cost-saving tools. So a little bit of a timely thing I like to talk about right now is the winter, this cold snap we just had. Is that going to kill off the aphids? There's actually been some good research done out there that shows that about the average point where soybean aphid eggs die off is about -21 Fahrenheit. So you should get 50% mortality then. So for a lot of the state, we actually didn't get quite that cold. When we get in northern Minnesota, we're kind of hanging around -25, -30. So we're going to see some mortality. And for folks listening on the radio, I have some maps up here, but just kind of walk folks through it. And it looks like, for the most part, we might be around 25% to 50% mortality of soybean aphid. We go back to 2019 when we had that pretty big polar vortex for 1 or 2 nights. We were well below -30 for a lot of the state. We were seeing close to 90% projected mortality for those aphids that year. So the cold will help us a little bit this year, but it's not enough to say you don't have to worry about soybean aphid this year. They could still fly up from the south, and there could still be some around starting populations this spring in your nearby buckthorn areas, off in your either woodlots or other areas. So I want to mention the insecticides a little bit for soybean aphid. Part of the issue we're running into is insecticide resistance. And what's been popping up, we have to rotate through different groups or modes of actions. And right now we're left with 4 different modes of actions until you talk about pyrethroids. So these are these group 3 insecticides. And it's getting to the point, it's looking like that we really can't recommend just straight pyrethroids very much anymore because resistance is showing up so much. That's one of the historical pesticides that we've been using for soybean aphid roughly from the start, as well as organophosphates like chlorpyrifos. Those are the group 1s. So pyrethroid resistance has been popping up since about 2015. And northwestern Minnesota really saw an outbreak of reports in 2017. Years since, soybean aphid has kind of been on the downtrend a little bit in terms of outbreaks. It's still popped up, but we haven't had as many severe years. So we haven't heard as many reports about pyrethroid resistance, but it is popping up. And I'll point out that there are some assays done by Bob Cook, our soybean entomologist, and he basically gathers aphids from different locations, puts them in vials coated with insecticide that should kill off 100% of them. And we're getting a few locations definitely over the years where you're getting 0% mortality or maybe 20% or so. So there's definite issues occurring with those. Some of our other groups are still working, like the organophosphates. There are some different active ingredients in there with some variable efficacy, but that's one tool we want to keep using if we can. But there are some regulatory concerns popping up there about detections in surface water. And that is showing up about the same time as when aphid applications are occurring, about in August. So that's just one thing to be mindful of is if you are applying insecticides, especially the organophosphates, you want to make sure you're having a buffer from any streams or rivers. So if it's an aerial application, be 150 feet away. If it's a ground boom, about 25 feet away. So we want to make sure that we can keep having these tools and we can manage the risks that are associated with them. So we can make sure that we have something available for soybean aphid. There are some newer chemistries out there that are kind of interesting. This is in the group 4, similar to these neonicotinoids. There's another one called sulfoxaflor or sulfoxamines. These work very well against aphids. They're actually pretty targeted against that type of insect, but they're not as harsh against the natural enemies like the lady beetles or some of these pirate bugs and other things that feed on the aphids. So these are actually the kind of insecticides that we want to use when it comes to integrated pest management. They're very targeted and they save our other tools that we keep using. You get a little better return on investment there. There's another group, this group 9 are the pyrapines. And you'll hear this as a trade name called Safina. And if there's one thing you want to take away from this, think about the term zombie aphids. And that sounds kind of odd at first. But what happens with this chemistry is it actually affects their mouth parts so they can't feed anymore. So when you go out in a field after you spray, you'll still find aphids out there for maybe 3 to 4 days or so. And by about the 5th day, that's when they actually start starving, dying off. Other insecticides pretty much kill them right away. They'll fall off the leaf. So you have to go out there a few days later, and if it doesn't seem like it's working, give it a few more days, and those aphids might be in the process of falling off the leaf, essentially. So it's not so much some weird freak of nature kind of thing when I say zombie aphids, but it's basically that they're out there doing nothing and kind of waiting to die. So it's kind of an interesting chemistry in that way. This is another one where it has less impact on the beneficial insects too. So we have 2 of these different tools out there we can use that for. The main thing with this insecticide resistance management is don't spray unless it is needed. And if you do spray, do it right. If you're tempted, like I know we are, even on our farm, you only want to go over a field once if you can for any applications. And you might be tempted to throw in an herbicide with your insecticide or vice versa. If you're out there with your last pass of Roundup or whatever else you're using, you might be thinking, oh, maybe I'll throw in a little insecticide for insurance. That can actually backfire on you from the financial perspective and also for resistance management. Because if you are applying herbicide, that's basically an application rate that's set for the herbicide. The insecticides have different requirements sometimes. They need to be able to penetrate the canopy, certain droplet size, and factors like that. So ideally what you'll do is you go out and plan to spray herbicide, decide if you need to spray an insecticide at a later date if you reach those thresholds I mentioned before. Always go back out and scout again after spraying, and if you need to respray, alternate those insecticide groups I mentioned, and those will be on the labels as well. And you can use some of these mixtures. There are instances with these pyrethroids where I mentioned we don't want to use straight pyrethroids anymore, but some of these mixtures with neonicotinoids or organophosphates still have some efficacy out there. But overall, if you're going to use mixtures, make sure you're using the full labeled rates. If they dial back the rates on each of those active ingredients, then you're actually speeding up the ability of those insects to adapt to it. So you want to make sure you're hitting them hard with the full rate. We have more guidance out there on insecticide rotations for soybean aphid. You can just Google insecticide options for resistant soybean aphid, and they'll give you a good walkthrough on what options you have. But what can happen here is basically we're left without one group. And let's assume in a field you don't use a seed treatment, which is that group 4 neonicotinoids, seed treatments for insecticides at least. You're left with a few options. You can use organophosphates, some of these mixtures, these group 4s that transform or Foxflor, or else this group 9 Safina. But if you use your seed treatment, you have to consider that in that given year in your rotation. So that actually knocks out a lot of options you can use for an initial treatment, or if you have to retreat. So you want to keep all of those in mind in terms of these different insecticide groups. So that's something as winter goes on here is if you are really itching to read something, go read your insecticide labels. It's not something you always expect to hear all the time, but think about what you're using and what options you have, because you might actually be pretty limited in what you're able to use on your farm without running into some risks of insecticides failing on you. So overall, these group 3 pyrethroids, that resistance is so widespread that we're usually not recommending them. These group 1 organophosphates, pretty effective still. There's increasing regulatory concern, but looks like we still have that tool for now. And then these group 4 and group 9s have some different traits to them that are less harsh on some of the natural enemies. Pollinator concerns still come up with some of these in the group 4s, but overall, keep all these tools in mind. Use good integrated pest management. If you rotate these modes of actions, that'll save some of the tools that we have for soybean. And with that, if there are questions, I can take any. Otherwise, I think we'll be moving on to the next person.
All right, thank you, Anthony. I do have one question. Can you talk a little bit about the soybean aphids and the buckthorn?
Sure. So I showed that map earlier, and soybean aphid overwinters on buckthorn. So one of the nice things about it for winter, at least, is that it's above the snow line. So it's basically, it lays its eggs in buckthorn in the fall and will overwinter as an egg under the leaf bud. And it just overwinters there until the spring. They'll hang out on the leaves when they emerge, and then they'll move over to soybean when that's out, probably about end of June, beginning of July or so. So they've got a kind of interesting life cycle there. But yeah, we use that buckthorn a little bit to predict some things, but buckthorn is again another invasive species. If we didn't have that, we wouldn't have soybean aphid either. Well, it's interesting how all that web can work there.
Definitely how the food chain works, how one thing depends on the next. So, all right. Thank you, Anthony. Whitney, where are we at here?
Today's live broadcast of the Norman County Virtual Crop Show is brought to you in part by the Norman County Farm Bureau, Larson Parts and Repair, Inc., the Ada Building Center, Austin Germolis Crop Insurance, and Acres and Shares. Thank you to all of the sponsors who have made today's coverage possible. You're watching the 2021 Norman County Virtual Crop Show here on yourliveevent.com and listening on KRJB 106.5 FM.
I would say what makes Ray Hybrids different than normal seed brands is the area. They've been here. This is where they started, selling some bags of corn out of the back of a pickup.
Whether it's their corn or their soybeans, they have what really is tailored to our area.
One of the things I really take pride in at Ray is the localness of our brand. Our customers want
industry-leading technology. Ray's been here. It knows the area. It knows the north.
It's easy to take pride in a company like Ray Hybrids.
And it's worth a lot.
Last but not least, here for the Norman County Crop Show, Angie Peltier, Extension Educator with the University of Minnesota, will be joining us to talk a little bit about soybean sudden death syndrome here on the Norman County Crop Show. Angie Peltier's presentation brought to you by Franson Bank and Trust.
Hanson Bank and Trust is proud to serve the families, farms, and businesses of the Red River Valley. I'm Greg Slaughton, president of the Franson Bank in Ada. We're a Farmer Mac lender with competitive rates on equipment, land financing, and operating lines. With Franson's online and mobile banking, you can access your accounts and make deposits from anywhere, even from the cab of your tractor. Call Danielle or me and see how we can help you get 2021 off to a great start. 218-784-7124 or make an appointment online at fransonbank.com. Member FDIC.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. We're going to join in with our last speaker here today, Angie Peltier, our crop extension specialist for the Crookston Regional Office. Angie joined us in 2017, in June 30th of 2017, from the University of Illinois Extension. So, Angie, we advertised that Angie was going to talk about soybean cyst nematode, but she's going to give us something else about soybeans that's probably up and coming and going to be so important for our soybean growers as we move forward into this next growing season. So Angie, welcome, and take it over.
Thank you, Heather. Thank you also, Whitney, and thanks to our sponsors today. This is a pretty neat idea and a neat program idea. So I'm actually kind of pulled an audible on Heather. I decided to talk about sudden death syndrome in soybean. I'll tell you why I'm kind of worried about that particular disease in a little bit. Sudden death syndrome is caused by a fungus. It's a fusarium species, Fusarium virguliforme. It can also cause disease in dry bean. It can cause yield losses higher than 50%. And just how much yield loss it can cause depends on which soybean variety we grow, how widespread symptoms are, when those symptoms begin to develop in our fields, and weather conditions, both early in the growing season, essentially right after planting, and then again during potting growth stages, so during those reproductive growth stages. And we'll get into a little bit more detail here. One of the reasons why I'm really worried about sudden death syndrome is because when I worked in Illinois, SDS wasn't a huge yearly problem. 2011, 12, we had next to no disease. As the years ticked by, what went from being a disease people would see every now and again went to basically changed over to a constant disease pressure where people hadn't been doing anything before. Now people are making very selective variety decisions of what they're going to plant in their fields. And they also chose to put an expensive seed treatment, fungicide, on all of their soybeans, just as a precaution because they had gotten burned so much. So in 2018, in North Dakota, Richland County, and across from Cass County in Clay County in Minnesota, sudden death syndrome was found in both of those counties in 2018. Come last year, North Dakota, so Sam Markell and his lab over at NDSU confirmed that SDS was found as far north as Cavalier County, and there was quite a few fields that had significant symptoms of sudden death syndrome up in that county. And so it's here, the pathogen is here, and it's probably a lot more widespread than we know. It's just somebody happens to be looking at the right place and at the right time. And so this is why I'm really worried about sudden death syndrome and why I wanted to talk about it here today. So what we would suggest people do when scouting for sudden death syndrome is start to scout when plants reach those potting growth stages. So those reproductive growth stages, you know, in August at the latest. Look for patches of unhappy plants. Typically those patches can occur in lower lying or poorly drained soil areas of your field. I know that kind of the poorly drained portion of that bullet point kind of describes most of the Red River Valley. So we're at some risk here. And this particular disease can also be found in compacted soils. So what you will typically see when you start to see symptoms of SDS, so let's say you're even driving by, you might notice that there's something going on in the field and the symptoms appear to be quite patchy in distribution. It's this way with every soil-borne pathogen. There's going to be higher and lower areas in the field as far as pathogen density, population density is concerned. So maybe those areas in the middle of the slide here that have this brown discoloration of the upper leaf tissue, maybe those areas had a much higher population density of the fungus than the areas further or closer to us in the foreground. Looking closer, when symptoms begin to develop, what you'll see is this yellow flecking, it's called, in between our leaf veins. So it's not like a distinct lesion. It's just kind of a nondescript yellow small patches in between our major leaf veins. As symptoms continue to develop, we will see symptoms spread. We'll see interveinal chlorosis. So that term is probably familiar to a lot of folks. Interveinal chlorosis is essentially yellowing in between those leaf veins. Might be familiar because so much of us deal with iron deficiency chlorosis in our soybeans up here in the Red River Valley. But do know that these symptoms of sudden death syndrome tend to occur later in the growing season. So you'll have, like I said, symptoms of interveinal chlorosis between those veins. And as disease further progresses, eventually that area that had been yellow between the leaf veins will die and kind of become a brown and crispy in texture material in between the major leaf veins. As symptoms progress even further, pretty soon none of the leaf tissue is alive except for those green leaf veins. Depending upon when symptoms like this occurs, if it's early in the growing season, that's when you're going to have more significant yield losses than if it occurs a little bit later in the growing season, just because there's so much more of the plant life cycle to go yet in the growing season. And so we would not have made our yield by that point. Eventually, you'll actually, if symptoms continue to develop, you will have a lot of our leaves just drop from the plant. For those of you that are watching on YouTube, it's pretty interesting. The leaves fall, but these little petioles, so those are the little stems that essentially attach the leaf blade to the main stem of the plant. Those will remain attached to the plant. Unfortunately, there's a lot of diseases in soybean that have show these similar symptoms where leaves might fall off or leaves might just die and remain attached to the plant too. So this isn't necessarily diagnostic. The disease cycle is very unique, I would say, in the soybean disease world. We need weather conditions to cooperate 2 separate times during the growing season in order for disease to develop. So like with any disease, we need those three aspects of the disease triangle to come together. So we need the pathogen. We now know it's in at least some fields in Northwest Minnesota and in some fields in eastern North Dakota. So pathogen is in some fields. We also have to have a susceptible plant host. So most of our soybean varieties haven't necessarily been, the breeding programs haven't necessarily focused on breeding for SDS resistance because this disease hadn't been around until quite recently. And then we also need that the weather conditions to allow the pathogen and the plant to interact. So cool, wet weather during or right after planting is required. What happens is the fungus will infect the plant through the roots just as soon as those seeds germinate and the radicals emerge from the seed. We might see root rot occur, might have lateral roots rot. The taproot itself won't rot. But what happens is later on in the growing season, June through August, as soon as our pods start to form and our pods start to fill, what happens is foliar symptoms begin to develop at that point, if there's plenty of moisture. That's because the pathogen itself still stays in the root tissue, and it's actually when rain falls and the plant is able to take up water from the soil, along with the water, the plant pulls up toxins that are produced by the SDS fungus, and those go into the leaves and cause all of those chlorosis and necrosis symptoms and leaves falling off. That fungus will always stay in the lower root in that lower stem area near the soil line. When infection takes place very early, the fungus is able to make its way inside of the root further. And inside the root tissue, that's where the xylem, the water conducting tissue in the plant, that's where the xylem is. And the fungus needs to make its way into the xylem in order to be able to have the toxins it produces move up and into the leaves later on in the growing season. And so the earlier the infection, the fungus is much more likely to make it into the xylem. And that's where we get significant disease and yield loss. Later infections might cause root rot, but the fungus won't be able to make its way into that xylem tissue. So we will be talking about SCN just a little bit here. So there's been 30 years of research looking at the interaction of the SDS fungus and the soybean cyst nematode. And 20 some research papers have been published on what people have found. And they've found that there's a pretty complex relationship between these two pathogens. But the bottom line is that soybean cyst nematode, which is that microscopic worm that parasitizes soybean roots, we don't necessarily have to have SCN in our field in order for SDS or sudden death syndrome to occur. But symptoms of SDS may be more severe when SCN is present. And when both pathogens are widespread, we need to make sure that we manage both diseases, because managing one won't be as effective as managing both. So this is another reason why having the fungus that causes SDS in our northwestern Minnesota areas is also worrying. A lot of our other crops, our rotation crops or forage crops, can also be symptomatic hosts of the pathogen that causes SDS. So obviously soybean, but some of our dry beans, so pinto and navy bean. Also, if we're thinking forages, alfalfa, red and white clover are also symptomatic hosts, and then pea. Soybean, alfalfa, and red clover, all three of those will have symptoms above ground, so foliar symptoms, whereas the rest of the hosts that I just listed, those might just have root rot symptoms. Sugar beet and canola is also thought, they're both also thought to be hosts, and that's because even though there were no symptoms necessarily when these plants were inoculated with the fungus, they had much less biomass, and so the fungus was having an effect on growth and development. Of particular concern, we have a lot of asymptomatic hosts in our cropping system. So corn, wheat, the pigweeds, and even lamb's quarters can become infected with the fungus that causes SDS, and they won't have either root or foliar symptoms, but the pathogen is able to survive and reproduce on those crops. And so it's very unlikely that crop rotation is going to manage our way out of an SDS problem. For management, what we would suggest is that first, with any disease, knowing your field history is just so darn important. If you don't know whether you have the pathogen that causes SDS in your field, and I would imagine most people don't, just because it's so new in the area, just do your best to scout this coming year, 2021. And if you find something, please let us know. We want to know the range of this particular disease in the state. Another way to manage SDS is scouting and sampling for SCN. Active SCN monitoring and then management is really important, just for SCN management's sake, because it is our #1 yield robber in soybean. But it's also really important to manage SDS as well, indirectly. We would ask that, if possible, plant an SDS resistant variety. Now this morning, I made several inquiries online into our all of the soybean companies, the big boys in our neck of the woods, and looked at their variety specs, looking for if they had any SDS ratings. And what I found was a whole lot of little dashes in either the row or the column, saying that they didn't have any data for SDS ratings, essentially. So I made some inquiries through email, and one seed company representative got back to me and said that SDS, he said, "Oh, do we have SDS north of I-94?" And so I'm pretty sure that a whole lot of research dollars and breeding dollars may not have gone into developing SDS resistant varieties. But if this is something that is a concern to you, you might talk to your seed salesman, because perhaps it's just an issue of not having it available online. There are 2 soybean seed treatments labeled for SDS. There's one from BASF called Elevo. I tested this when I used to work in Illinois, and it was very effective down there. I've seen some data for another very effective seed treatment recently. It's called Saltro. It's from Syngenta. And this is actually, these are both from the same fungicide class. So that's the SDHI fungicides. Elevo is an active ingredient, fluopyram, And Saltro active ingredient is adapidin. That's also the active ingredient in Moravis Ace that people use in wheat and barley to manage Fusarium head scab. So that's probably why that active ingredient name sounded familiar. Now, let's say you come up with a field and some plants in your field that you suspect might be SDS. There's a couple of ways to get a diagnosis. So one is to send a sample into the plant disease clinic. So University of Minnesota has one, NDSU has one, and their websites, obviously searchable online. When you get to the websites, they'll tell you they're fee for service type of organization. So they will charge you to diagnose your disease. They'll also tell you, though, how to submit a sample so that your sample arrives in a decent enough shape so that they can actually perform a diagnosis. And so it's really important before collecting the samples and before sending them in that you read very carefully the Plant Disease Clinic website details about how best to do that. Another resource that was essentially supported by your soybean checkoff funds is called Digital Crop Doc. So all anybody has to do is go online and search Digital Crop Doc, and you'll find it. It'll be the first thing that pops up on your search engine. This is essentially a program to help with disease diagnosis in several crops. So soybean, corn, small grains, sugar beet, and forages. And you simply fill out an online form and then submit photos of the diseased plants that you'd like diagnosed. And what University of Minnesota Extension personnel do is they look at your submission. They then try within 3 business days to provide a diagnosis, a preliminary diagnosis to you at no charge. So just wanted to let you know about those 2 services. And especially as we're kind of in the learning phase in this area about sudden death syndrome, you might want to get a confirmation that you are thinking or aren't thinking what you think you're seeing. So that is it.
That is it. All right, Angie. I do have does planting date or tillage help manage that sudden death syndrome?
Great questions, Heather. Staggered planting date to figure out whether SDS whether planting date had any effect on SDS. And what they found was that as they move planting date from like early May into June, they can really cut back SDS symptoms, both incidence and severity of symptoms in their fields. But there becomes a point of kind of diminishing returns because by pushing planting date back, you're also limiting your own yield potential. And it's not as if you're going to have significant disease pressure every single year. And so we would suggest that people continue to plant when they would typically plant, but do know that particularly if it's going to turn very cold or very wet right after you plant, and the chances of that occurring are going to be higher the earlier you plant, that your crop might be at significant risk for SDS.
Sure. We hear the foliar fungicides a lot in the small grains world, putting those on, helping with the scab, helping with, whatever else we need to, and that also helps those leaves and those plants stay healthier. Does that help with the sudden death syndrome in soybeans as well? Does it act similarly?
That's a really good question too, Heather. So a lot of work, so before, I'd say maybe 2013, 14, before the first seed treatments that were effective for sudden death syndrome came out and were available commercially for purchase, there was really nothing people could do to manage sudden death syndrome. But in the meantime, they tried absolutely everything. And so all of the seed treatment active ingredients that were on the market at that particular time, everything was tried, nothing worked. And then people thought, well, foliar fungicides are now in the mix. Maybe it couldn't hurt. Maybe we'll try it out. And so essentially the idea behind it and why they wanted to try it out was thinking, well, maybe if they could keep the leaf tissue greener for longer, maybe that would buy some time for the plant. Unfortunately, what happens with our foliar fungicides is that most of them act in a protectant manner, meaning that they need to be in place before disease occurs in order to be effective. And so what happens here, once we start to see symptoms of SDS, it might feel really good to put out a foliar fungicide, but the fungicide would not come in contact with the fungus itself, because it's going to hang out in those root tissues and in the lower stem tissue right at the soil line. So it won't be at the right point in the plant, and it won't be at the right time of the growing season, because infection would have long ago taken place at the beginning of the growing season, and we're just starting to see symptoms now. So unfortunately, none of the foliar fungicides that were tested provided any kind of relief from sudden death syndrome symptoms.
Different plant biologies between wheat versus soybeans. It makes our sciences very important, doesn't it?
Makes it interesting.
That's right. I don't think, Whitney, that we have any other questions at this point. So I think we are about ready to wrap up. Thank you, Angie, for your presentation.
Well, thank you, Heather, and thanks again to your sponsors. I know I really enjoy visiting with the crew at the typical Norman County Crop Show, and so I'm hoping that we'll get to see you all again next winter.
That would be a wonderful change to see people face to face, wouldn't it?
Agreed. Take care.
Thank you again for joining us on the Norman County Virtual Ag Day Crop Show program. Just a few closing things that we have to wrap up our program today. First of all, thank you. Thank you to all the sponsors that provided the support for us to do this virtually. It takes a lot of hands to make this go around. So thank you to the radio station and to all the other sponsors as well. We heard some great words today. We heard from Congresswoman Fishbach and her message. Even though it was recorded, it was great to be able to see her and to hear from her. Looking forward to what she can do for us in Northwest Minnesota. Mike Skaug talked about the Ag Innovation Campus a little bit coming in Kirkston, and those huge capabilities and opportunities coming forward for some of the soybean future in the northwest part of the country in the state of Minnesota. Randy Tufton gave us some great information and wants those farmers to give them calls and get their programs signed up. We got that QLA program and that ARC and PLC choices that are coming up. Those decisions need to be made shortly here, excuse me. Austin gave us some information on the status of the sugar beet industry with American Crystal, so thank you to him for that. Jeff from AgCountry talked about the business side of the farming, looking at the markets and how important knowing what those markets do helps us figure out how to make some money on our business side of our farming operations and do that business plan and break evens so we know how to market our crops. Anthony and Angie talked to us about soybean pests and diseases. So knowing your pests, scouting your fields, if you don't know anything, not if you don't know anything, if you don't know what you're looking at, please give us a call at the extension office, regionally or locally. We'll do our best to figure out with you what you're looking at and give you options to hopefully move forward. So scout your fields, sample for soybean cyst nematode. We know that's prevalent in the area. So that's kind of the recap that I've got there, Whitney. So again, thank you to our sponsors.
Thank you all for joining us here once again for the Norman County Crop Show, virtually on the airwaves of KRJB 106.5 FM and yourliveevent.com. Unfortunately, yesterday we had some technical difficulties, so today we are taking care of some of the little bumps in the road and smoothing things out just a little bit. And hopefully you guys were able to enjoy listening to the show, get some information out of it. Thanks again for watching. And thank you once again to all of our sponsors: Ray Hybrids, Norman County Soybean and Corn Growers, the Bennett Hoagland Agency, Soyco International, the Kappas Laren Agency, West Central Ag Services, Franson Bank and Trust, Minnesota Wheat Growers Association, AgCountry Farm Credit Services, the Norman County Soil and Water Conservation District, Boston Tri-Co-op, and the City of Ada. Says Vonderhoff Sugar Beet Seed, Norman County EDA, RDK Enterprises, Dan Ness, Beta Seed Sales Representative, IRE Insurance, Legacy Seed, Community Co-op Energy Solutions, Valley United Co-op, Norman County Farm Bureau, Larson Parts and Repair Inc., Ada Building Center, Austin Jamolis Crop Insurance, and Acres and Shares.